The galaxy had never seen a war like this. The vast armadas of alien species clashed in the cold void of space, each one vying for control over the countless star systems that spanned across the universe. It was a war of attrition, where the strongest fleets ruled and the weaker races were destined to fall. But one species was not like the others, the Deathworlders, humankind, a race of survivors who had endured untold horrors on their homeworld, but never submitted, never surrendered. Their spirit, unbroken by the harshest of conditions. Humanity was a paradox to the galactic powers. They had once been little more than a curiosity, a primitive species, no more significant than the countless others scattered across the stars. But that was before the war, and before they revealed the one weapon that could change everything. When the first battles began, the Deathworlders were ignored, dismissed by the larger galactic factions, who viewed them as nothing more than a nuisance, a handful of ships with little chance against the might of fleets built for destruction. But they were wrong. Humanity had a secret weapon, one ship that no one could have anticipated, the Dreadnought, a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its design was based on the brutal and unforgiving environments of Earth, where survival was not guaranteed, and where only the strongest endured. The ship was built to withstand extreme conditions, and was armed with weapons powerful enough to tear through entire fleets with ease. The Dreadnought was not just a battleship, it was a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. It carried with it the hope of an entire species that had never known defeat. It was designed to be a fortress in space, an unyielding force that would stand firm against any challenge. And when the first skirmish erupted, the Dreadnought made its presence known by tearing through enemy lines with a precision that left even the most seasoned alien commanders stunned. The ship's weapons were unlike anything they had ever seen. Its shields absorbed their attacks with ease, and its cannons fired with deadly accuracy, each blast leaving a trail of wreckage in its wake. At first, the alien fleets believed it was a fluke, a single lucky shot, but as the Dreadnought continued to press forward and destroy every enemy ship in its path, the laughter began to fade, their confidence shattered by the sight of humanity's indomitable will to fight and survive. The Dreadnought was not merely a weapon, it was a statement, a declaration that humanity was not to be underestimated, and the galactic powers quickly realized that they had made a grave mistake. In the aftermath of that first battle, the Deathworlders' reputation began to grow. Their tactics were unpredictable, and their ability to adapt to any situation was unmatched. Alien forces sent their most elite fleets to deal with the humans, but time and again they were left in ruin in the wake of the Dreadnought's destruction. They had expected to crush the humans in the blink of an eye, but now they were facing a foe unlike any other, a foe that could not be broken no matter how hard they tried. And the war was about to change forever, as the Deathworlders proved that a single battleship could stand against the might of an entire galaxy. The galaxy's elite had underestimated humanity, dismissing them as mere primitives, struggling to survive in the dark corners of the universe. But the Deathworlders had always been different. Earth was a place where only the strong survived, a planet torn apart by nature's unrelenting forces, and humankind had adapted to every challenge it presented. This brutal environment had shaped them into a species of survivors who learned to fight, to endure, and to never give up. And now the galaxy was about to learn just how far those lessons had taken them. The Dreadnought wasn't just a ship, it was a reflection of humanity's survival instincts, designed to outblast, outthink, and overpower any force that dared to stand against it. Its hull was made from alloys forged in Earth's most extreme conditions, able to absorb hits that would have turned other ships into space debris. Its engines were powered by a combination of human ingenuity and scavenged alien technology, giving it a speed and maneuverability that defied expectations. And its weapons, they were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each cannon was a devastating force that could pierce through shields and hulls, each strike sending shockwaves that rippled through the very fabric of space. When the Dreadnought first engaged in battle, it had been seen as a bizarre curiosity by the alien commanders, who were certain it was a one-off anomaly, a last-ditch weapon of desperation. But after the destruction of several key fleet formations, they quickly realized that this was not some fluke. The Dreadnought had proven itself to be something far more dangerous. an embodiment of humanity's will to survive, to adapt, and to fight on against all odds. The galaxy's most powerful fleets rallied together, hoping to end the human threat once and for all, but their collective confidence was quickly shaken as the Deathworlders used every advantage they had at their disposal. The dreadnought was not simply a weapon of destruction. It was the spearhead of a new kind of warfare, one that focused on the art of unpredictability. Human commanders had studied the terrain of Earth, and now they applied that same knowledge to the galactic battlefield. No longer did they fight the way their enemies expected. They knew how to use their environment, how to disappear into the chaos of space, how to make every move a calculated surprise. Humanity's strength wasn't in numbers. It was in their ability to think outside the box, to take risks when others would hesitate, to turn what was thought to be a weakness into an overwhelming advantage. Alien ships, no matter how advanced or vast, were no match for the guerrilla tactics humanity employed. The dreadnought would appear out of nowhere, strike with lightning speed, and disappear just as quickly, leaving only the wreckage of enemy ships in its wake. The Deathworlders used their enemies' own mistakes against them, exploiting every vulnerability with terrifying precision. As each victory mounted, the reputation of the Deathworlders spread across the galaxy. What had been seen as a joke had become a nightmare for the galactic powers. The dreadnought wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol, one that embodied the defiance of a species that refused to be crushed. As more and more alien fleets fell, there was a growing realization that the Deathworlders weren't just a threat. They were a force of nature, something that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be bargained with. They would fight to the bitter end, and they would make sure that no one would ever forget what had happened when humanity decided to stand up for itself. And so, the galactic war began to shift in ways no one could have predicted, with the Deathworlders leading the charge toward an unknown future. As the war dragged on, the galaxy's leadership began to scramble, desperate to understand how one species, with just a single ship, had disrupted their vast and seemingly invincible empires. The dreadnought had struck fear into the hearts of the galaxy's most powerful factions, and the alien races, proud and ancient, could no longer dismiss the humans as insignificant. What they hadn't counted on was humanity's resourcefulness, their ability to take on the impossible and turn it into a weapon. Each engagement with the Deathworlders left them more confused, more unsure of how to proceed. They had anticipated overwhelming force, an easy victory. What they got instead was a species that refused to play by anyone's rules. The dreadnought had proven its strength time and again, but it was never about the ship alone. The humans who piloted it, the commanders who led the operations, they were as much a part of the victory as the ship itself. Human ingenuity had transformed their weakness into their strength. The galaxy's factions might have had their vast fleets, their superior technology, their fleets of ships capable of destroying entire planets, but the Deathworlders had something else. They had creativity. They had the will to fight on in the face of certain death. Human tactics were evolving constantly, unpredictable, as the Deathworlders adapted to every challenge the galaxy threw at them. The dreadnought's commanders understood one fundamental truth. Victory was not guaranteed by the size of one's army, but by how effectively it was used. And the humans were proving that point over and over. They did not engage in head-on battles when they didn't have to. They would strike the enemy when they were least prepared, when their guard was down. They lured larger fleets into narrow asteroid fields where their ships couldn't maneuver, and then picked them apart piece by piece, taking down their strongest and leaving the weaker vessels stranded and vulnerable. The dreadnought became a harbinger of chaos, its presence disrupting the careful plans of enemy fleets and forcing them to react instead of attack. What made the dreadnought so dangerous wasn't just its firepower. It was the way it used its surroundings, its ability to blend into the darkness of space, to appear when least expected, and disappear just as quickly. The galaxy's most advanced fleets were built for dominance, not flexibility, and they struggled to counter the unpredictable nature of human warfare. The Deathworlders didn't fight fair. They fought to win. They adapted, evolved, and exploited every opportunity that arose. In one encounter, a coalition of alien races, their most formidable force yet, attempted to corner the dreadnought in a nebula, hoping the dense gas clouds would disable its sensors and make it vulnerable. It was a trap, the kind of tactic that had worked against lesser species in the past. But they hadn't counted on human ingenuity. The dreadnought's crew had spent years preparing for such a move. They reprogrammed their targeting systems to see through the nebula's interference, using the clouds to their advantage. The enemy fleet, confident in their trap, found themselves scattered, with ships falling one by one, unable to escape the reach of the dreadnought's cannons. Every victory, no matter how small, served to embolden humanity. The Deathworlders were no longer a fringe threat. They were becoming a serious contender, one that couldn't be ignored or erased with brute force. The galaxy had made a fatal mistake when it had dismissed humanity's potential. Now they were paying the price. The alien fleets began to grow wary, their commanders growing increasingly frustrated as the Deathworlders seemed to be everywhere at once, striking fast, retreating just as quickly, always leaving destruction in their wake. The balance of the war had shifted. The galaxy's factions were no longer certain that they could win, and somewhere deep in the heart of space, humanity was just getting started. The more the galaxy's fleets clashed with the Deathworlders, the more the scales of the war seemed to tip in humanity's favor. Despite the massive superiority in numbers, despite the technologically advanced ships of their enemies, the Deathworlders had one thing their opponents lacked: an unrelenting drive to survive. The dreadnought was a force of nature, a symbol of human ingenuity and determination. But it wasn't just the ship itself that had thrown the galaxy into chaos. It was the way humanity fought, how they bent the very rules of warfare to their will. Alien commanders, used to conventional strategies and overwhelming numbers, were now on the defensive, struggling to adapt to the ever-evolving tactics of the Deathworlders. Every battle was a new lesson for the galactic powers. They would send their best fleets, equipped with the finest technology, to crush the human threat. And yet, time and time again, they found themselves bested by human creativity and ruthlessness. The dreadnought would disappear into the void of space, only to reappear at the most unexpected moment, launching a sudden strike that crippled the enemy's flank or annihilated their flagship. Even when outnumbered, the Deathworlders fought with an intensity that left their enemies scrambling for answers. In one particularly devastating battle, a fleet of 4 alien dreadnoughts, each one larger than the dreadnought, cornered the human ship in the debris field of a shattered moon. The aliens thought they had finally cornered the Deathworlders, believing that no ship could survive a bombardment from 4 ships of that caliber. They fired relentlessly, their weapons aimed directly at the dreadnought, confident that this would be the end of the human threat. But the dreadnought had already anticipated their move. As the enemy ships closed in, the dreadnought activated a series of decoys and cloaking systems, confusing the alien sensors and creating multiple false targets. The alien ships fired blindly, their shots missing as the dreadnought continued to weave through the debris field, taking advantage of the asteroids and shattered moon fragments to shield itself from incoming fire. Then, when the aliens were convinced they had exhausted all of their options, the dreadnought struck. Its weapons fired in synchronized bursts, taking out the propulsion systems of the first 2 dreadnoughts in a single devastating blow. The remaining 2 ships tried to regroup, but it was too late. In a final strike, the dreadnought disabled the last 2, leaving them crippled and adrift in space. This battle, like so many others, proved the Deathworlders' mastery of space warfare. They didn't rely solely on raw power. They used strategy, surprise, and their understanding of the environment to their advantage. Their enemies might have the firepower, but humanity had the will to outthink them. It was becoming clear to the galactic powers that they couldn't simply rely on their fleets to win this war. The dreadnought had become a symbol of terror for the galaxy. Its victories, once seen as lucky accidents, now appeared to be part of a larger pattern, a reflection of humanity's capacity to adapt and overcome. The Deathworlders were no longer just a nuisance. They were a serious threat. And as each battle passed, they gained more allies, more converts to their cause, as other species began to realize that humanity might be the only force capable of stopping the galaxy's tyrannical rulers. The more victories humanity racked up, the more powerful their message became. No matter how advanced their enemies were, the Deathworlders would never back down, would never stop fighting. And slowly but surely, the balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. The war was no longer a question of if humanity would survive. It was a question of when the galaxy would be forced to acknowledge their victory. As the war continued, humanity's victories began to mount in a way that stunned the entire galaxy. The Dreadnought had not only proven itself as an unbeatable force, but had become a symbol of hope for the oppressed races scattered across the stars. The Deathworlders, a species once seen as an insignificant relic, were now seen as the last defense against the growing tyranny of the galactic powers. Humanity had done more than survive. They had become the spark that could ignite a revolution. For the alien factions, this shift was disastrous. The Dreadnought had proved time and again that it could stand up to the most powerful fleets, but humanity was no longer fighting alone. The Deathworlders had shown their resilience and ingenuity, but now their message was spreading across the galaxy. Smaller, oppressed species began to rally to their cause, offering support and joining the fight. The strength of the Deathworlders was no longer in their ship alone. It was in their ability to inspire others to rise up and stand against the overwhelming power of the galactic elites. Each victory added fuel to the growing resistance. Humanity's ability to adapt and improvise in the heat of battle was unmatched. In one instance, the Dreadnought was cornered by an entire armada of alien ships in the dense asteroid fields of a remote system. The alien forces thought they had finally trapped the human ship, believing it would be an easy kill in the narrow passages between the asteroids. But the Deathworlders had one advantage that their enemies never counted on. They knew how to fight in a way no other species could. The Dreadnought's crew began to use the very environment to their advantage. They manipulated the gravitational fields of nearby asteroids to create a chain reaction, pulling enemy ships off course and into collisions. Some of the alien ships, desperate to avoid destruction, fired on their own vessels in a frantic attempt to regain control, while others were pulled into the debris field and destroyed. The Dreadnought, though severely damaged, emerged victorious, with the alien fleet shattered and in disarray. What should have been a trap turned into a devastating defeat for the galactic powers. As the battles continued, the Deathworlders' tactics grew even more unconventional. They had learned from their enemies, studying their strategies, and using that knowledge to turn the tide in their favor. The galaxy's powers sent their most elite forces to fight the humans, but it didn't matter. The Deathworlders had shown time and time again that they could outthink their opponents, exploiting weaknesses and turning the most hopeless situations into opportunities for victory. The Dreadnought's crew became legends. Their names were whispered in awe by those who had fought with them and against them. They were the human commanders who could outwit the most brilliant alien tacticians, the warriors who had learned the art of war on a planet where every day was a fight for survival. Their creativity, their resourcefulness, their sheer refusal to back down had turned the tide of the war. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, and now they were paying the price. And yet, despite all their victories, the Deathworlders knew that the hardest part of the war was still ahead. The galaxy's elites had been wounded, but they would not go down without a fight. The Dreadnought and its crew had become the rallying point for the galaxy's resistance, but the stakes were rising. The final battles were coming, and the Deathworlders would need every bit of their strength, their ingenuity, and their willpower to see this war through to its inevitable conclusion. In the shadows of space, the galaxy held its breath. The war was not yet over, but it was clear that the Deathworlders were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. And the entire galaxy was about to see just how far humanity was willing to go to claim victory. The tide of the war had irrevocably shifted, and as the Deathworlders' victory count grew, So did the tension across the galaxy. The alien fleets, which once believed that humanity was a minor threat, now saw the dreadnought as an unstoppable juggernaut, a singular force that had upended everything they thought they knew about warfare. But for all their advanced technology and sheer numbers, the galactic powers were no closer to defeating the humans than they had been when the war began. In fact, they were running out of options. The Deathworlders had proven that even the most calculated and powerful attacks could be turned back with cunning and precision. Desperation set in among the alien command councils, and as the dreadnought continued to dismantle fleet after fleet, the galaxy's powers began to change their tactics. No longer was it just about overwhelming firepower or brute strength. Now, the Deathworlders were becoming the target of everything the galactic elites had left: resource draining, sabotage, and covert operations. The aim was clear: destroy the dreadnought, and humanity would falter without it. But these new tactics would prove to be just another lesson in how dangerous humanity had become. At the heart of this change was a coordinated assault. A clandestine coalition of alien warlords, seeing the dreadnought as the centerpiece of humanity's resistance, devised a plan to strike at the ship's heart. They would hit humanity's most vital supply lines, cripple its remaining fleet reinforcements, and then launch a surprise assault on the dreadnought itself. It was a strategy that relied on cutting off the humans' ability to adapt, hoping to starve them of the resources that kept their ingenuity running. They knew that the dreadnought was humanity's greatest weapon, and if it fell, the Deathworlders would no longer have the ability to turn the war around. In response, humanity proved once again that it would not bend. They had fought tooth and nail to get where they were, and they were not about to lose everything now. The dreadnought's crew, led by the brilliant minds of human strategists who had studied their enemies extensively, anticipated the move. They had already prepared several countermeasures for this exact scenario, turning the tables on their would-be assassins. As the alien warlords launched their offensive, they quickly found that their secret assault had been foiled from the start. Using decoy transmissions, the Deathworlders led their enemies into a trap, an ambush set on a remote moon orbiting a gas giant. The dreadnought had been bait, but humanity had also prepared backup plans. The dreadnought's shields held strong, and the ship, armed with human-made and alien-forged weapons, began to tear into the invaders' fleet with brutal efficiency. But it wasn't just the dreadnought that was fighting back. Humanity's ingenuity had once again outdone its opponents. A series of well-placed mines, disguised as derelict ships, detonated in perfect coordination, obliterating the supply ships the aliens had hoped would starve the humans. What followed was an all-out battle of attrition, with the dreadnought and its allies picking apart the weakened alien fleets. Despite being outnumbered, the Deathworlders' ships fought with the ferocity of a species that had endured unimaginable hardships. The alien forces, who thought they had trapped humanity, found themselves instead outmaneuvered and crushed. It was a stunning victory, one that sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The idea that a single ship could lead to such a decisive defeat of their entire strategy was both infuriating and terrifying to the alien warlords. In the aftermath, as the dreadnought emerged from the wreckage victorious once more, the galaxy's powers were forced to reconsider their strategies. The Deathworlders had once again proven that it wasn't about size or numbers. It was about how a species adapted to its environment and used every tool at its disposal to survive. The enemy had tried to outsmart them, but they had underestimated one crucial thing: humanity's willpower. And now, that very willpower had become the galaxy's greatest threat. The time for hesitation had passed. The galactic powers, once confident that humanity's victories were mere flukes, now understood that the dreadnought and the Deathworlders had become a formidable force. After the devastating ambush, the alliance of alien warlords fractured, leaving the galaxy divided and uncertain. The death toll on both sides had been astronomical, and the galactic elites were left grappling with the harsh reality. Humanity was no longer just a nuisance. It was a serious threat to the established order of the universe. As the dreadnought pressed forward, the galaxy's rulers convened in secret councils, devising their final response to humanity's rise. A counteroffensive, unlike anything seen before, was put into motion. This time, it wasn't just about numbers or firepower. The galaxy's most advanced species, those who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, united in a desperate attempt to end the war once and for all. They pooled their resources, called in their best tacticians, and launched a unified assault on the heart of human resistance. But in their desperation, they made a grave mistake. They underestimated humanity's ability to fight and adapt. The dreadnought was the target, yes, but humanity's strength had long since surpassed the confines of one ship. The war had transformed the Deathworlders into an unstoppable force, one that could match the alien powers not just with technology, but with sheer ingenuity. The humans were no longer relying solely on the dreadnought. They had constructed entire fleets, built new weapons, and learned how to strike when their enemies least expected it. The galaxy had underestimated their capacity for unity and innovation, and now that was coming back to haunt them. The counteroffensive came like a storm, with the most advanced fleets converging on human space. Hundreds of ships launched in perfect synchronization, their weapons aimed directly at the heart of humanity's strongest defense. The Deathworlders' strategy, however, was not to meet their enemies head-on. Instead, they deployed a series of decoy ships, mimicking the dreadnought's signature and sending the alien fleets scattering in pursuit of false targets. With each misstep, humanity struck. One of the most stunning moments came when a massive galactic dreadnought, a flagship of the Allied fleet, was tricked into pursuing a decoy. The dreadnought's real location was far from their expectations, in a system deep within the galactic core. The aliens, drawn into the trap, split their forces, thinking they were attacking humanity's most vulnerable point. But the Deathworlders were ready. They had been waiting for this exact moment. With the dreadnought's devastating firepower leading the charge, humanity's forces erupted from the core in a coordinated strike that shattered the alien fleet's cohesion. What followed was nothing short of chaos. Alien ships collided in their panic, fire and debris lighting up the cold expanse of space as the dreadnought and its allies tore through the weakened forces. The galactic powers, once so confident in their ability to crush humanity, now found themselves on the back foot. The dreadnought emerged unscathed, its weaponry cutting through the enemies with terrifying precision. Humanity's smaller vessels, nimble and fast, picked off any survivors, ensuring that not a single ship would escape. It was a devastating defeat for the Galactic Alliance. The sheer audacity of humanity's strategy, luring them in, isolating their forces, and striking with overwhelming force, left the alien warlords reeling. For the first time since the war began, the galaxy's rulers could no longer ignore the reality. They were losing. The Deathworlders, with their single dreadnought, had not only held their ground, they had broken the back of the alien coalition's war effort. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. The war was not over, but it was clear that the tide was turning in humanity's favor. The galaxy's powers, once arrogant in their superiority, now knew they would need to reconsider their entire approach. Humanity had proven that even against impossible odds, the Deathworlders would always find a way to adapt and overcome. The final phase of the war was approaching, and every side knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The final stages of the war had arrived, and the galaxy was holding its breath. The Deathworlders had gone from being a curiosity to a nuisance to an undeniable threat, and now they were poised to bring the galaxy's grand empires to their knees. The alien alliances that had once viewed humanity as a speck in the vastness of space now saw the dreadnought and its crew as the symbol of their imminent downfall. The dreadnought itself, though battered and scarred from countless battles, was more than just a ship. It was a beacon of resistance, a reminder that against all odds, humanity had not only survived, but had become a force that could no longer be ignored. The galaxy's leadership, battered from years of conflict, convened for one final council. The Deathworlders had taken down fleet after fleet, humiliated their mightiest forces, and now the question was no longer if humanity would win, but how the galactic powers would attempt to save face. No strategy they had tried had worked. The Deathworlders had adapted to every challenge, outwitted every trap, and crushed their enemies with the precision of a species that had never known surrender. Now, it was time for the final gambit, an all-out assault on humanity's homeworld. The galactic leaders had come to the conclusion that Earth itself, the cradle of humanity's spirit and will, was the only way to break them. If they could destroy the planet, they could erase the very foundation of the Deathworlders' power. With Earth gone, the dreadnought would be nothing more than a relic, its crew leaderless, and the war would end in their favor. The alien fleet mobilized, the largest armada ever assembled, prepared to strike the heart of the Deathworlders' resistance. But humanity, as always, had prepared for this. The dreadnought was not alone. In the years since the war had begun, humanity had built its own armadas, ships capable of rivaling the finest fleets the galaxy had ever seen. And they weren't just prepared to defend Earth, they were prepared to take the fight to their enemies one last time. The Deathworlders would not be cowed. Humanity would not allow their home to be destroyed. The final battle unfolded in a system that humanity knew better than any other, the solar system, where Earth's gravity still held sway. The combined forces of the galactic empires came, expecting a straightforward victory, expecting to finish off the Deathworlders once and for all. But humanity had learned, over the years, how to fight in ways no one could predict. The dreadnought, surrounded by humanity's newfound fleets, engaged the enemy head-on, luring them into a trap. As the alien ships charged toward Earth, they were met with waves of fire from human forces, using tactics that confused and overwhelmed their attackers. The battle was like none before it. The alien fleets, with their superior numbers, were drawn into a close-quarters conflict, where the dreadnought's weapons and humanity's ships excelled. The dreadnought's cannons ripped through the alien lines, and humanity's fighters, honed in battle, tore through the enemy ships with incredible precision. The galactic empires had hoped to cripple the humans by attacking their home, but they had miscalculated. Humanity wasn't fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to win. In the end, the galactic fleets were shattered. The dreadnought had once again proven its worth, and humanity had shown that no amount of force, no matter how overwhelming, could defeat a species that refused to be broken. Earth remained untouched, and the enemy, their ranks decimated, was forced to retreat. The victory was undeniable. Humanity had not only held their ground, they had defeated the most powerful forces in the galaxy. As the war came to a close, the Deathworlders stood victorious. The galaxy would never be the same. The empire that had once ruled the stars was no more, and humanity had cemented its place in history as the species that had defied every expectation, overcome every obstacle, and claimed victory in a war that had seemed unwinnable. The dreadnought and the Deathworlders had won. The galaxy would remember the name of humanity, the species that never gave up, that never backed down. And from that moment forward, no one would ever underestimate the Deathworlders again.